அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். பயாலஜி தமிழ்நாடு சேனல் சார்பாக உங்களை அன்புடன் வரவேற்கிறோம். இன்றைக்கி நாம் என்ன பார்க்க போகிறோம் அப்படின்னா, உங்களுடைய ஸ்டேட் போர்டு புக்கில் இங்கிலீஷ் மீடியம் பயோபாட்டனி புக்கில் இருக்கக்கூடிய செகண்ட் லெசன் கிளாசிக்கல் ஜெனட்டிக்ஸ் அதில் இருக்கக்கூடிய 1 வேர்ட்ஸ் நம்ம பார்க்க போகிறோம். இதில் பார்ட் 2ல் நாம் 50 கொஷின்ஸ் பார்க்க போகிறோம். வாட் ஆர் த மெண்டல்ஸ் ரூல்ஸ் ப்ரூவன் பை மோனோஹைப்ரிட் கிராஸ்? Law of dominance and law of segregation. Which law of Mendel states gametes are never hybrid? Law of segregation. The genetic constitution of an individual is called genotype. The observable characteristic of an organism is called phenotype. Which law of Mendel is said as law of purity of gametes? Law of segregation. Name the graphical representation to calculate the probability of all possible genotypes during a genetic cross. Punnett square. Name the cross that indicates monohybrid crosses are not sex dependent. Reciprocal cross. What is called fork-line method? Checkerboard method. Genotype ratio of monohybrid cross. One is to 2:1. Phenotypic ratio for monohybrid cross 3:1. Who was the first scientist to use qualitative analysis in a biological experiment? Mendel. The gene A sequence showed a single nucleotide change that makes the transcription factor inactive, so the flower color will be white. Which cross is used to identify whether an individual is homozygous or heterozygous? Test cross. Active form of gibberellins are mentioned as GA1. Which gene codes for a protein which functions normally in the gibberellin synthesis pathway? LE. In which cross the F1 offspring is crossed with either of 2 parents? Back cross. Which genetic cross which involves individuals differing in 2 characters? Dihybrid cross. Which law states about 2 pairs of traits? Law of independent assortment. Independent assortment leads to genetic diversity. If an individual produces genetically dissimilar gametes, it is the consequence of independent assortment. Which law of Mendel is concerned with alleles of one gene? Law of segregation. Mention the dominant and recessive trait of seed shape. Dominant round, recessive wrinkled. Mention the dominant and recessive traits of cotyledon color. Dominant yellow, recessive green. The genotype of pure breeding round yellow plant is represented as capital R, capital Y. Mention the dihybrid cross ratio. 9:3:3:1. What is SBEI? Starch branching enzyme 1. Mention the length of the DNA which interrupt the normal gene of seed shape. .8 kb. Mention the shape of pea plant which accumulates more sucrose and high water content. Wrinkled. Name 2 water insoluble carbohydrates accumulated in round seed of pea. Starch, amylopectin. What is the ratio for dihybrid test cross? 1:1:1:1. A single phenotype is controlled by more than one set of genes, each of which has 2 or more alleles. This phenomenon is called gene interaction. Intralocus interactions are otherwise called allelic interactions. Interlocus interactions are otherwise called non-allelic interactions. What are the 2 types of non-allelic or interlocus interactions? Epistatic or non-epistatic, additive or polygenic interactions. Example for complete dominance. Tall and dwarf pea plants. What are the types of lethal genes? Dominant lethal, recessive lethal, conditional lethal, sex-linked lethal, balanced lethal. Various exceptions of Mendelian findings was introduced by W. Batson. The hypothesis framed by W. Watson is factor hypothesis or Batson's factor hypothesis, in which cross no blending of genes takes place. Incomplete dominance. Mention the botanical name of 4 o'clock plant. Mirabilis jalapa. Ratio of incomplete dominance. 1:2:1. Write the ratio of codominance. 1:2:1. Example for codominance. Red and white flowers of camellia, inheritance of sickle cell hemoglobin, and ABO blood group in human. Mention the methods to demonstrate codominance in plants. Electrophoresis or chromatography for protein or flavonoid substance. Name the plants in which codominance was observed. Gossypium hirsutum and Gossypium statianum. An allele which has the potential to cause the death of an organism is called lethal allele. Who reported lethal gene in snapdragon, that is Antirrhinum species? E. Bohr in 1907. The type of lethality present in Antirrhinum species is Recessive lethality. Mention the ratio of dominant and recessive lethal genes. Dominant 2:1, recessive 1:2. In which gene interaction single gene affects multiple traits and alter the phenotype of the organism? Pleiotropy. Example for pleiotropy: sickle cell anemia. Which interaction takes place between the alleles at different loci, that is, alleles at different genes? Interlocus interactions. மேலும் பல தகவல்களை தெரிந்து கொள்வதற்கு பயாலஜி தமிழ்நாடு சேனலை சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணுங்கள். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
பலருக்கு சேவை செஞ்ச நீயும் ஒரு ஹீரோடா. ஒரு கைப்பிடி சோறானாலும் ஷேர் செஞ்சு பாருடா.